One of the most developed countries in East Africa is known as Kenya. With all due respect to all countries in East Africa, I still believe that Kenya has constantly put East Africa on the global and international limelight countless times. In terms of politics, Kenyan politics always defines the political future and the political landscape of East Africa. In terms of sport, Kenya is always the undisputed champion and the only country that comes close to Kenya in East Africa during International Olympic Games is Uganda. And in terms of fashion and trends, Kenya has brutally reinvented itself by being the most vibrant and innovative country on social media, making Kenya one of the most social media active population in the whole of Central and Eastern Africa. It's always said that if you want to be successful in Africa, just make sure your brand is well known in Kenya, because the Kenyan audience is always one of the most difficult audience to capture their attention. But if you can capture the attention of the well-informed Kenyan audience, then automatically and definitely you will capture the attention of Africa. Today, I bring you the story of one extraordinary lady who has mastered the art of capturing the attention of East African audience through her brilliant content creation skills. This is a lady who has captured the attention of both the young and the old generation of Kenyans and East Africans. Today, I give you the inspiring story of a lady who has managed to reinvent the art of content creation in East Africa by being herself fearlessly and packaging her powerful and strong brand on YouTube. The way she does it is known to many, but she has her own skill on how she does it on a daily basis. I believe that this lady has managed to put Kenya on the map through her genuine hard work and consistency. This is the story of Evelyn Wanjiku MUNGAI, popularly known as MUNGAI Eve. From a small village known as Gashiku Village in Murang'a County, a child was born. Unknown to many, this child would grow up to become one of the biggest brands in Africa, but it's always said that every greatness starts from scratch. Murang'a County has always been the home of extraordinary humans who have risen from small humble beginnings to legendary status in Africa. But the little known Gashiku village is our focus for today. In the year 2000, 6th of April, in Gashiku village, Mr. and Mrs. MUNGAI gave birth to a bouncing baby girl, and they named her Evelyn Wanjiku MUNGAI. As their daughter grew up, they did their best to provide her basic needs, but it was not always easy, because life in the village is not always as easy as it looks. As their young daughter grew up, she went to primary school and later enrolled in a local high school after finishing primary school. But due to financial struggles, she had to be moved from one school to another constantly because her parents wanted the best level of education for their child. Even though it was not always easy for them to afford our school fees, they made it their priority to fight towards the dream of their daughter. few years later, in the year 2019, their young daughter was now a grown-up lady, and she had graduated from high school. So her parents decided that the best thing to do was to send their daughter for the first time in her life outside Murang'a County in search of good and quality education. This is why on the month of September 2019, Mungai Eve joined NIBS to study professional journalism. Being able to move away from the village at the age of 19 years was one of the most inspiring moments in the life of Mungai Eve, because for the first time in her life, now she got the opportunity to meet other people from different cultures and from different backgrounds. And that's why Mungai Eve has always remained respectful to her parents, because she constantly remembers the sacrifice that her parents made for her to pursue her dreams in life. Life in campus is not always as flashy as it looks, because Mungai Eve had to learn how to survive in campus. But due to her previous struggles in the village in Murang'a, there was no turning back for Mungai Eve. And that's why Mungai Eve had to adapt to the difficult life in campus. But unfortunately, 3 months later and 3 months down the line, the COVID-19 corona pandemic halted everything around the world. So Mungai Eve had no option but to go back to the village, as the Kenyan government shut down all learning institutions around the country. Depressed, frustrated, and confused, at this time, Mungai Eve found herself back in Gashiku village in Murang'a County with her parents, and it was one of the toughest moments of her entire life, as she had to depend on her parents to provide for her basic needs away from school for several months in the village. Mungai Eve was raised by a hard-working mother who always wanted the best for her daughter. And on the other side, Mungai Eve's father was always a strict parent who constantly reminded Mungai that he wanted her to be a school teacher. Every day, Mungai Eve would wake up in the morning and watch her parents struggle to provide for their family. And she always felt frustrated, because all she ever wanted was to reduce the burden for her parents. The COVID-19 pandemic halted everything in Kenya. So at this point, Mungai Eve had no option but to remain in the village with her parents. But one day, something happened. Few months before coronavirus pandemic struck in Kenya, Mungai Eve had made friendship with a young man known as Trevor from a neighboring campus. During her days in campus, Mungai Eve was always fascinated by journalism, film, fashion, and photography. So one day, she went with a group of friends in campus for a special photo shoot. And as fate would have it, Mungai Eve naturally bonded with the choreographer, and they exchanged contacts. The young talented photographer was none other than Trevor. At this point, Trevor was still in campus in JKUAT, and Mungai Eve was in NIBS. So when they met during the photo shoot and exchanged contacts, they maintained their communication up to the time when the government ordered for the closure of all learning institutions around the country due to corona. Trevor, being a student at a neighboring campus in JKUAT, had to move back to his village in Kisii. And at the same time, Mungai Eve also had to move back to the village in Murang'a County. As their friendship moved from normal friendship to serious dating, they both kept it as a secret from their parents, out of respect. But the long distance from each other was a bit difficult for both of them. Trevor got a brilliant idea while in the village in Kisii County. So he took his phone, called Mungai, and told Mungai Eve that life in the village was difficult, and he had made up his mind to move back to the city, because being a photographer, he was willing to hustle on his own and start his own life from scratch back in the city. In the month of September 2020, both Mungai Eve and Trevor decided to take one of the biggest risks ever in their lives. They both decided to move back to the city and start life together, knowing very well that their parents would not approve of it at that time, but this was a risk that they were both willing to take. As Trevor traveled all the way from Kisii County, he knew deep inside his heart that his success would not be guaranteed automatically, but he always had faith in his creativity, both for film and photography. So this was a risk worth taking. On the other side, in Murang'a County, as Mungai Eve traveled back to the city, all she wanted was to do something with her life away from the village. So she managed to convince her parents to set her free so that she could move away from the village on her own back to the city. Life is all about risks, and at times, the best way to turn big dreams to reality is to take small steps of faith towards the direction of your wildest dreams. The month was September, the year 2020. Mungai Eve and Trevor have just moved in together. Nothing was ever easy for them because at this moment, Trevor was the one providing for both of them. At one point, Trevor had to sell his own camera at a throwaway price only for them to put food on the table and for them to be able to pay their huge debt for their house rent. The struggles made them question their decisions several times, but their faith in their dreams gave them the patience that they needed for them to keep going and for them to keep hoping for a better future through constant hard work. Trevor noticed that Mungai Eve was always fascinated by journalism. So one day, Trevor gave Mungai Eve an idea. Trevor asked Mungai Eve if she could open her own YouTube channel. When Trevor gave Mungai Eve this brilliant idea, at first, Mungai Eve was hesitant, but finally, she accepted the offer, but she did it reluctantly, knowing very well that she had no interest for social media at that time because Mungai Eve had always been an introvert who was never used to standing in front of the camera. It is always said that great ideas are born at the most painful moments, and that's exactly what happened to Mungai Eve. From the day Mungai Eve decided to stand in front of the camera to interview people on the streets of Nairobi, she was amazed by the response she got on her YouTube channel. Trevor gave Mungai Eve the idea of starting her own YouTube channel, and Mungai Eve, even though she was still reluctant because it was something that she had never done before, she decided to take the risk, and that's how her YouTube channel was invented from scratch. One day, while recording random interviews on the streets, she started following the story of an upcoming hip-hop group. And through the grace of God, her coverage of the beef between Mbogi Genje and Madocho put Mungai Eve on the limelight. And from that day onwards, every upcoming hip-hop artist in Nairobi wanted to be interviewed by Mungai Eve. Within a short period of 2 months, the unknown YouTube channel for Mungai Eve moved from an invisible brand to one of the most engaging and most vibrant YouTube channel in East Africa. Step by step and slowly by slowly, big celebrities started associating themselves with her growing brand. And I remember, even at one point, one of the most famous comedian in Africa, known as Eric Omondi, decided to buy a microphone for Mungai Eve to promote her YouTube channel. Few months later, Mungai Eve was no longer the shy introvert who feared cameras, but she boldly stepped onto the shoes of greatness, boldly and fearlessly through courage. And that's why today I'm here to salute Mungai Eve and Trevor for a job well done. Thank you, Mungai Eve and Trevor, for showing young dreamers in Africa that through hard work and genuine effort, nothing is impossible. Thank you, Mungai Eve and Trevor, for putting Africa and Kenya on the map.